I just want to get some info out there regarding all the horse manure being spread by the bootlickers, feds, real deep state operatives, and the oligarch overlords in regards to the assassination attempt on Donald Trump at one of his MAGA cult rallies in Butler, Pennsylvania. This conspirator who has no credibility, Alex Jones, couldn't wait to put out a video full of erroneous narratives and disinformation to help flood the zone with excrement, recording a video in his backyard within minutes of the news breaking, before any details have become available. Jones is using the term deep state again, or more appropriately, abusing the term. I just want to remind those who follow my work over the years and new viewers that the term deep state has been completely co-opted by the same people it was coined to describe, like Alex Jones.
I talked to one of the top 5 people in the CIA repeatedly.
Peter Dale Scott has published books over decades covering the role of the deep state as opposed to the public state, rejecting the label of conspiracy theory. He uses the phrase deep politics to describe his political concerns. To my knowledge, Scott coined the term deep state. In 2014, Scott published a book featuring his updated and new research called The American Deep State, well before the term deep state was hijacked by the pro-Trump QAnon psyop. I would argue that one of the objectives of QAnon has been to co-opt the term and divert attention away from Scott's work. This also has created confusion and helped to discredit the term deep state by associating it with QAnon, fake news and kooks that are featured in this video, while at the same time the people behind Q are still using the term for political gain to those who have bought into the QAnon psyop. For those familiar with the subject and followers of my work will notice that Q's complete blackout of the deep political connections to Donald Trump, and they will twist the narrative that those behind and supporting Donald Trump are fighting the deep state. This is a complete lie, and the QAnon psyop is in fact part of a real deep state. Anyone pushing this idea that QAnon is legit is misinformed, a troll, a kook, or a disinformation agent. QAnon is in part an attack on Peter Dale Scott and real researchers who have been exposing the deep state for decades.
For those of you unfamiliar with my work and who I am, my name is Josh Reeves and I'm a radio talk show host as well as a documentary filmmaker. And back in September of 2007, I began my radio show entitled The Global Reality with Josh Reeves. And on the second show that I ever hosted, I had a guest on my program by the name of Professor Peter Dale Scott. Now, during the course of this conversation, Professor Scott and I talked about, the various groups that are generally held in reverence as being part of the power structure in New World Order related research. And so we get to talking about the various groups that most people talk about, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission. And during that interview, Professor Scott said, well, there's actually a group that has maintained more power and control now than even the CFR, and they're a more secretive and powerful version of that is mostly made up of people on the right-wing side of things. And I've sort of been on this trek since then of really uncovering the group, finding out who is this group, the Council for National Policy, what do they control, what have they been involved in the past, and what are the implications of a group like this operating in secrecy right in front of our faces.
This is what Peter Dale Scott has to say in regards to what the deep state is. Quote, it refers to a parallel secret government organised by the intelligence and security apparatus, financed by drugs and engaging in illicit violence to protect the status and interests of the military against threats from intellectuals, religious groups and occasionally the constitutional government. Then he's referring to one of his books and he says, I adapt the term somewhat to refer to a wider interface in America between the public of a constitutional established state and the deep forces behind it of wealth, power and violence outside the government. You might call it the back door of the public state giving access to dark forces outside the law. If we just take a look at the cover of one of Scott's books, the subtitle says, Attack on US Democracy. So who is attacking democracy? Who has been undermining election results? Who tried to overturn an election? Who stopped the peaceful transfer of power on January the 6th? Who attempted a coup? This book was published in 2014, before any of that happened. Now let's take a look at Jerome Corsi. Corsi is operated as an agent of this deep state apparatus described by Scott, and coincidentally just happens to have co-opted the term in the manner described earlier, using the term in the title of one of his disinformation-filled books.
About 3 years ago, a group of generals came to me, and it was explained to me they were ready to conduct a coup d'etat. They were ready to move Barack Obama from office with military force. And then a few weeks later, I got another call and said that they were reconsidering. You know why they were reconsidering? No, why? Because they talked to Donald Trump. And Trump agreed that he would run. And they agreed that if he would run, they would conduct their coup d'etat as a legitimate process, rooting out the traitors within government. And that pact between the military and Donald Trump has held. As we've been interpreting and watching, and Alex has been following QAnon, QAnon is military intelligence and close to Trump.
So who is Corsi referring to? Well, in previous investigations, I've established key links to various retired generals who just so happen to be part of this same deep state network. One key link is a General Paul Vallely, who I've covered in depth in a previous video, titled QAnon Psychological Operation, featuring Vallely confirming what Corsi previously stated about QAnon being military intelligence. I describe it more accurately as a military psychological operation against the American people.
General Vallely, I have a question for you from our chat room on the American Radio fan page. Do you know who the individual calling himself or themselves, if it's an organizational effort, Q? What do you know about that? Was that part of the PSYOP? What are you at liberty to say? Or is it a bunch of bunk?
Well, let me just tell you the QAnon's tied to information. And it comes out of a group called the Army of Northern Virginia. Okay?
Yep.
Now, this is a group of military intelligence specialists of over 800 people that advise the president.
And so,
the president doesn't have a lot of confidence in the CIA or even the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, as much anymore. So he relies on these real operators. Most of them are special operations type of people.
Yep.
And so this is where Q picks up and gets some of their information, as I understand it.
Special ops? Sure sounds like the deep state to me. Corsi was a significant promoter of QAnon, as were many others involved in this network. Corsi presented himself as the official decoder of Q's drops, and tried to give context to Q that often promoted the same talking points and narratives used to deceive people into and maintain support for Donald Trump, and giving supporters false hope and leading them down conspiracy theory rabbit holes. Vallely is linked to PSYOPs in the military along with Michael Aquino, the Pentagon's military analyst program. He worked for Fox News as the senior military analyst He worked for Fox News as the senior military analyst post 9/11, promoting support for the Bush administration's neocon war on terror. Vallely also promoted anti-Obama conspiracy theories, including the birther conspiracy theory that was promoted by Jerome Corsi and was the issue that catapulted Donald Trump into the political spotlight. The birther conspiracy theories were likely an effort to delegitimize Obama's legal right to be president and used as justification for a coup, resulting in Obama's removal from office. Vallely publicly stated he would lead a coup against Obama, something Corsi mentioned in the clip played previously, and described by Scott as something a, quote, deep state would be involved in. Vallely was pushing QAnon conspiracy theories and stating that Q gets intel from the military, specifically the Army of Northern Virginia. So there is a considerable crossover between Corsi and Vallely. One interesting claim Vallely made involves the next general.
How did you get Donald Trump on your show 3 times prior to the election? How did you pull that off?
All right. I never tell this on my own show, and this will probably end up being news tomorrow, but you deserve it. I know folks that are part of Delta Force, and I know people that are part of covert action in the Defense Department and the CIA. And quite frankly, they've given me authorization to talk about this. I have never been in the CIA. I have never been part of covert operations, but separately, I've had family. I've had family that got like 7 Silver Stars and stuff like that, but it's all classified. Some of the highest decorated people in the country. I'm very proud of those people. They're a lot more manly than I am, and most of them are dead. But people involved in regime changes, you name it. Right here in Texas, fighting hard for the Republic. And I was basically contacted by groups inside the Special Forces operations in Florida, inside breakaway groups inside the Central Intelligence Agency, and groups basically behind American industry, and that they had briefed the president, or now then candidate Trump, and that they wanted to attempt a counter coup against the globalists. And so I'm just revealing to you here on air that I was recruited by patriot elements inside the shadow government.
But this is what got Donald Trump to say, I got to be on this guy's show?
Donald Trump was advised by the Special Forces Command out of Florida. They said
to go on your program.
Special Operations Command in Florida, the Delta Force, Army, Black Ops. They said, sir, you need to go with Alex Jones, and you need to rally the troops. And they briefed him. They showed him the documents, and they said, we need you to run. And the Delta Force basically asked Trump. Delta Force, founded by General Boykin and Schumacher and people like Dr. C. Pachenik of Psychological Operations of the CIA. They basically delivered the message to Trump with all the dossiers and all the proof of what was happening. And he just said, you're highly recommended. All I can say is we're going to be talking a lot more because he was being briefed by top generals. I'm not going to say the name on what we're doing. And it's not that I'm even special. I'm willing to say this. I'm willing to do this. I wasn't directed by anybody. I was just aware of the operations. I was studying it. As you know, you're a Navy guy yourself. And we just did what we had to do. We did a counter coup against them.
We got a lot of other big sources in the military. I've got sources, I'm not going to say from what units or groups, but the most elite, of the most elite, highest level, we have it. I'm going to leave it at that. CIA, Dev Group, Delta Force, you name it, all of it. Whole 9 yards.
So there you have it. Alex Jones admits that he's a deep state operative, working with special forces with expertise in psychological operations. I've clearly established considerable crossover in the accounts given by Jones, Corsi and Vallely that the deep state are behind Donald Trump. It is therefore logical to conclude that there is no deep state plot to assassinate Donald Trump. Believe me, if there was, he'd be dead. Now getting back to Vallely, one interesting claim made by Vallely ties him with another general.
I got to ask you, General, this is another question that I talked about with another fellow that I was talking with just the other day. Do you personally know or have you had interactions with General Michael Flynn?
Yes.
You guys know each other pretty well?
Fairly well.
And have you
Matter of
spoken?
fact, well, I was in Moscow a couple months before he went over, so I talked to him before he left. And then when he left to go over there and go to the 10th banquet of Russian television, and he sat with Putin. I had been in Moscow 2 months earlier than that, setting up the meeting between Trump and Putin, which I did while I was there. And that was at the G20 conference in 2017.
So Vallely went to Moscow to set up and plan the meeting between Trump and Putin. This guy is a serious operator, operating as a representative of a shadow government, deep state back channel. If you remember, the meeting between Trump and Putin was behind closed doors. The 2016 presidential election was riddled with interference from Russia that helped Trump get elected. Serious questions have to be raised about the relationship between the deep state and Russia, and how far it goes. We've seen the Russian mafia expand globally since the Jackson-Vanik Amendment. We've seen the military working with the mafia in the past, and today the dominant mafia in the United States and globally is the Russian mafia. The Trump organization's ties to Russian mafia figures have been established. When it comes to Donald Trump, the Russian mafia state are allied with the US deep state with a shared continuing support of the former president. The powers behind the Jackson-Vanik Amendment have played a key role in the military-industrial complex. American Security Council member Senator Henry Scoop Jackson was branded the whore of Boeing for his obvious shilling for the defense contractor. Is a man whose name is on the amendment. He was such a loyal servant that the neoconservative think tank, the Henry Jackson Society, is named after him. Richard Pearl served as a senior staff member of Jackson alongside Frank Gaffney. Pearl was instrumental in authoring the Jackson-Vanik Amendment. Gaffney is a founder of a hawkish Center for Security Policy military-industrial complex think tank operating in a similar fashion as the American Security Council. Richard Pearl is on the advisory board of the CSP. Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin was one of the two quote team leaders of CSP's Team B2, which released a report entitled Sharia, a Threat to America, published by the Center for Security Policy. The original Team B is known to have over-exaggerated the capabilities, arsenal and threat the Soviets posed at the time they were collapsing. Paul Vallely serves as a military committee chairman for the Center for Security Policy and has his own think tank, Stand Up America, according to co-founder and retired Air Force Lieutenant General Thomas McInerney. Its stated purpose is to, quote, protect America and let people understand the danger of radical Islam and the seriousness of global jihad, unquote. As part of the organisation, Vallely has also founded the Legacy National Security Advisory Group, a defence consulting group that advised 2016 Republican presidential candidates on foreign policy, and he is thought to have proposed the Muslim ban that Donald Trump attempted to make law, and a proponent of a very costly and ineffective border wall. This is a guy, by the way, who advocates for fiscally responsible government. Other members of the group include a retired Navy Admiral James Lyons, who not only served as chairman of the Center for Security Policy's Military Committee, he was the co-author of the CSP's Team B's Sharia, a Threat to America with Boykin. Another member of the group is Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, notorious for his role in the Iran-Contra affair, a key topic covered by Peter Dale Scott. One of the key points Scott made on the subject is that you can't fully understand Iran-Contra without the Mujahideen, and dubbed the affair the Iran-Afghan Contra, cocaine trafficking used to fund the Contras, and Operation Cyclone that supported the Mujahideen through heroin trafficking, laundering their ill-gotten money and prepared it for covert operations the likes of Boykin and Vallely were involved in.
Everybody comes to me now. The Barry Seals story is the secret history of the 1980s. His life and violent death were bracketed by two very public events. In the first, he piloted the C-123 military cargo aircraft to Nicaragua in a drug sting that was designed to be the Gulf of Tonkin incident of a U.S.-Nicaragua war.
I know every American parent concerned about the drug problem will be outraged to learn that top Nicaraguan government officials are deeply involved in drug trafficking.
This photograph, taken from the back of Barry Seals' plane, purports to show a Sandinista official, Federico Vaughn, loading cocaine onto Barry Seals' plane. In fact, Federico Vaughn worked for Oliver North.
Here is a clip of Jerry Boykin talking about his wife and children, alongside none other than Oliver North.
First of all, I want you to understand that my children are Jewish. Just by Jewish law, my children are Jewish because their mother is Jewish. So I have a deep passion for Israel.
The general most closely associated with the military psychological operation known as QAnon is the disgraced General Michael Flynn, who briefly served as National Security Advisor in the early stages of the Trump administration before stepping down in light of reports that he had lied regarding conversations with Russian ambassador to the United States, Sergei Kislyak. He also failed to disclose his work lobbying for foreign interests, violating the Foreign Agent Registration Act. Not that it needs to be said, but Flynn is also part of this deep state nexus.
And Michael Flynn must be vindicated. He was one of the individuals that the deep state attacked first, as you remember. And what they've done to that gentleman who's a great patriot and a soldier have just harmed him and his family so much. So I think all of that's going to be turned around for General Flynn. We'll see what happens shortly.
Flynn co-authored Field of Flight with Michael Ledeen, who played a key role in the Iran-Contra affair. Ledeen used Italian intelligence connections to supply fake intelligence documents that contained information that Saddam Hussein had obtained yellow cake uranium in Africa. This disinformation was cited in President George W. Bush's 2003 State of the Union address. It has long been used as justification for the Iraq invasion, claiming Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. This also ties in with Plamegate, where the military-industrial complex Nexus outed Vallely Plane intelligence agent after her intel contradicted Ledeen's sources. In the fallout of that, Paul Vallely got involved on behalf of the deep state and spread false information regarding Plane's husband, revealing her role in the CIA to him in an attempt to protect journalists Robert Novak and his sources Karl Rove, Richard Armitage and Scooter Libby. In June 2013, Michael Flynn became the first US officer to be allowed inside the Russian military intelligence GRU headquarters in Moscow. His follow-up trip to visit the GRU HQ as director of the DIA was not allowed. Flynn also wanted to invite high-ranking GRU officials to the US, but this idea was rejected by then Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, Army Reserve officer working with Flynn on his pro-Trump disinformation assault on democracy, who has previously faced an internal Army Reserve investigation for violating reserve rules against partisan political activity. This unhinged individual dubbed himself as Trump's Secretary of Retribution. Lieutenant Colonel Ivan Raiklin published a kill list of political opponents. Ivan, that's an interesting Russian name. Ivan the Terrible Raiklin is quite fitting.
Ivan Raiklin, what happens if they steal it again? Or what happens if they kill Trump?
That's what I was going to get to, the most dangerous course of action, right? That's the most
I mean,
most
what does that do? I mean,
I will say
they've turned him into literally Obi-Wan Kenobi.
If they do that, option 2 behind Trump is going to be so much better for us and so much worse.
Well, I was about
for
to
them.
say, if they kill him, that's best case scenario from a sick level. From a sick level beating him, oh, please kill him, which but it's so good after that.
Oh, it's going to be the best cleansing and the fastest cleansing that we've ever seen in my lifetime. I assess with almost certainty, with the highest level of confidence, that if they assassinate Trump, it is so game over for them, and it's going to be so fast.
I'm actually scared of that, though. It's so explosive.
It is. That's why, I mean, it's a warning to them, right? If they cross the Rubicon, you saw how popular he was. I mean, by just prosecuting.
When I get close to the zeitgeist, it's not a pussy thing. I start getting tears because my brain goes in overdrive. And when I start hearing about Trump being assassinated, I start literally, because my brain is like.
No, I've thought through this. I mean, you think through this. It's a chess game, right? Second, third, fourth move, fifth move, and if they do that, it's.
Well, I pray for Trump not to be killed.
It's going to accelerate.
If they're dumb enough
inevitable.
to kill him, though, they have literally handed us total victory.
So, which begs the question. I'm going to ask you this question, Alex. Who then takes the reign if they do that to Trump?
I don't know.
I just think that General Flynn becomes the inevitable leader.
Oh, General
of the
Flynn,
movement.
obviously, yeah.
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
If they do that. So think about it. Trump's probably going to be better for them. Because if General Flynn, I mean, think about it. The people that General Flynn would bring into the administration.
The globalists are all going to prison.
So that clip speaks for itself. There's also plenty of other former military personnel involved in this network. Please like, subscribe and hit the notification button. Thanks for watching.